Hey guys, welcome to the fifth day of the webinar series on Python for machine learning. Giving you just a quick recap, in the last session, we have started with the fundamentals of machine learning. We understood what is the workflow involved in developing a machine learning model. And we have also seen our first machine learning algorithm, which is nothing but linear regression. We took a data set like house price prediction data set, and then we have tried understanding how house price prediction can be explained using just two features. So on the x-axis, we have taken the square feet, and on the y-axis, we have taken the cost, and then we tried plotting a scatter plot and try fitting a regression line through that. So all that stuff was explained in the last class. A gist of the linear regression algorithm is shown right now. So hypothesis is basically drawing a line, okay? And parameters that we have to tune are theta 0 and theta 1. So we have a gradient descent algorithm that will automatically try to find what is theta 0 and theta 1 such that the cost function, that means the mean squared error, is minimal. Okay, so our objective was to find out a global minimum. Okay, so like I said in the last class, a linear regression algorithm will always have a global minimum and it will not have a local minimum. The reason is that the cost function in linear regression is an inverted bell curve. So it always has a global minimum at this particular point. So it is always a U-shaped curve. So we don't need to bother about the local minimum. And then we also understood what is a multivariate linear regression, because the reason is when you are trying to build a machine learning model, if you are building only based on the square feet and trying to predict the cost of the house, it is not actually a good model, because the predictions of such a model may vary a lot with a lot of error. So our objective is to bring down the error, and improve the accuracy of the predictions. So it is always good that we have to consider more number of features, important features that can actually contribute to the result. So when we come to a multivariate linear regression algorithm, like I said earlier, the problem is that when we go for gradient descent algorithm, we may have to do partial derivatives of the cost function with respect to each and every theta. Okay, so our equation, the hypothesis, is becoming more complex because we are considering more number of features. So your gradient descent algorithm will become very difficult, or I can say that the complexity of this particular algorithm will be increased. So in order to avoid that complexity, we are trying to go for a linear algebra model where we define a normal equation which goes like this. So where the X matrix is nothing but the feature matrix, and then Y matrix is the one which we want to predict. That means the class label, which is nothing but price in this case. So we try fitting everything into this X matrix and try predicting the Y value. So we need to find out for which theta values this particular equation satisfies. So we get the theta values. Okay. So that is what exactly we have studied in the last class. So in the last session, I was able to show only the linear regression implementation in Jupyter Notebook for the simple one. Okay. So we have seen that. So today we are going to see linear regression with multiple features. Okay. So I'll quickly go through the code. So you can also just follow right now. So initial thing is that I have loaded the houses dataset. Okay. So let me just quickly change the path to this particular thing. So which I'll take it from the previous one. Okay. Right. So I'll quickly get the data set. And once we got the data set, so now I'm just checking again whether is there any null values in the data set. So we don't have anything. So one thing, one change that you can observe here is that in the previous code, we have taken only square feet living as the feature column. Okay. So our plot was basically between living square feet and house price. So this time, because we are going for multiple features, what I have done is I have taken bedrooms, square feet living, square foot lot, and floors, all the four together as our features. And y is the one that we want to predict. That means price is what we have to predict. So it is just that simple in scikit-learn. I mean, when we are implementing using the scikit-learn package, the moment I consider more number of features into my X data frame, automatically the scikit-learn package will do apply a normal equation and it will try to find out the theta values. Okay, so we don't need to do any more changes. Today I got a question saying, okay, what if I want to plot? While plotting, please understand the plotting is always between an X and a Y. The moment you involve more number of features in the X column, this will not be anymore a two-dimensional plot. Rather, it will become n-dimensional plot, right? So if you want to see the linearity between the features, you have to plot them separately. Okay, you have to apply the scatter plot separately between the features and see if there is any linearity followed in the data. Okay, but you cannot visualize all the features together at the same time, right? So once the feature columns are taken, so this is my feature columns. Okay, and this is my label that has to be predicted. Okay, label, or I can say the regression part that I have to predict. Now, once this is done, okay, now once that is done, we are again splitting up the data like I have shown in the last class. We are trying to split up the training data into training data as well as validation test data. Okay, so test size is equals to 0.2. Okay, and this random state is equals to 0 just says that how it has to divide the data set. Okay, so it can be any integer value. Even if you don't give also, it is absolutely fine, but there is a significance for this attribute. You can just look it up in case if you really need it. Okay, changing the random state will tell you like how the training is actually taking place. Okay, so regressor is equals to linear regression. I'm calling the function of the scikit-learn, and then I'm trying to fit through the X train and Y train. Okay, once that is done, I'm just printing the regression coefficient. So you can see here that we got these coefficients. Okay, it's not theta 0, by the way. See, theta 0 is the y-intercept. Okay, so I'm talking about the coefficients right now here. So you can see that this is theta 1, theta 2, theta 3, and theta 4. So we have taken 4 features. So 4 theta values we got here, right? Now I'm trying to predict the y labels using the regressor.predict on the X test. Okay, so let's run this. Okay, so once I do that, I'm taking the Y test and Y prediction into 2 different data frames. Why am I taking that is to find out what is the mean squared error now. Okay, what is the mean squared error right now, and I'm taking a square root of that and just printing the root mean squared error of that. So you can see that the root mean squared error is here around like 244 and 474. Okay, this is what is the mean squared error that I got. Earlier, we got a mean squared error somewhere close to 249601. Okay, 249601. So you can see that there is a drop in the mean squared error, but you can also see that it is not a significant drop. Okay, it is not at all a significant drop in the mean squared error. Okay, that means this shows us that we can still do better pre-processing on our features such that my mean squared error will be much better than what we have obtained right now. Okay, so I'm not going to do that. Okay, I'm not going to do that, but I'm going to tell you some tips of how you can improve the accuracy of this particular model. Okay, so one thing that you have to do is that the things that you have taken are bedrooms, square foot living, square foot lot, and floors. Okay, so square foot living, square foot lot, floors, and okay, and what else we have taken? We have taken also the bedrooms. Yeah, okay, we have also taken the bedrooms. So we can also consider bathrooms. Okay, we can also consider the number of the condition. We can also consider the condition. Okay, we can also consider the square foot above. We can include some more features actually into our feature set. And also the square foot living, everything is actually in thousands. Bedrooms are actually in the floating point numbers. Bathrooms are in floating point numbers. Bedrooms are actually in the integer parts, which are like very low values. Okay. So what I would suggest is like you can apply some normalization techniques on all of them. Okay. So if you want, I can name some normalization techniques. Okay. One of the famous few things are like max min normalization or min max normalization. Okay. Min max normalization, right? Or z-score normalization. Okay. You can just find out, like you can apply one or two different normalization techniques and see like how you can convert these values into a scale, into a proper scale. Okay. The advantage is that when you apply normalization on this particular bedrooms column, they'll be put into a scale, maybe between -1 and +1, or maybe between 0 and 1. Now similarly here also, when you apply it on square feet living, that also gets converted to the same scale between 0 and 1, and so on. The advantage with normalization is that all the features that we have considered for our machine learning model will be lying within the same number range. If everything is lying in the same number range, then all the features are actually equally contributing to the result. Okay. Now, the problem here right now in our model is that the number ranges are actually like completely different. Few numbers are like very high, few numbers are like very low. So that actually gives us a bias in the result. So that's the reason we may have to go for normalization. So applying normalization and considering some more features into our feature set will actually improve the mean squared error of this particular model. So I would like you guys to take up it as a simple exercise and try it out for yourself and let me know your result. Okay. So with that, our multivariate linear regression part is actually done. Okay. Now moving on to the next algorithm, which is logistic regression. Okay. So though the name says logistic regression, it is not actually a regression model. That means we are not going to predict a continuous value. Okay. So at this point, I would like to reiterate that regression predicts the output as a continuous number. Okay. So like I said, price of a particular house or sales of a particular department and so on, it is a continuous output. Whereas logistic regression falls into the category of classification. So when I say it is falling into the classification, it basically has a discrete output. That means class labels. Like for example, if it is a binary class, whether it is 1 or 0, whether it is true or false, like that, it has some discrete output. So you can see a quick difference between the linear regression and the logistic regression. Okay. So linear regression is where our task is actually to fit a line through the data, so that when you extend this particular line, that should help you in predicting the y for an unexpected x. Okay. So that is our objective. Whereas in logistic regression, our task is not to fit a line through the data, but our task is to fit a curve or a function or a hypothesis such that we have to differentiate two different classes. Okay. So let's say here in this particular case, I can say that these red dots are actually belonging to a class called 0. And here these red dots are belonging to a class called 1. So my objective here is to draw a hypothesis, okay, such that I want to differentiate this class and I want to differentiate this class. So that is my objective in a logistic regression. Okay. So the problem here is that when we try considering the same cost function such as linear regression. So what is our cost function in linear regression? It is basically nothing but the mean squared error. Okay, the mean squared error, and we give it the same mean squared error to find out our theta values based on the gradient descent algorithm. Okay, so that's what we are doing in linear regression. But the problem in logistic regression is that we cannot take up the same cost function. The reason is if you take the same cost function that we have in linear regression, if you apply the same thing to the logistic regression, when you try differentiating or when you try plotting the cost function, you can see the cost function will be like this. Okay, it will not be a perfect inverted bell curve. Okay, it will not be a U-shaped curve. Rather, the cost function can be like this, something like this. Okay, the moment you get a curve like this, which is not exactly a bell-shaped curve, the problem is that you will get a local minimum. There is a possibility that you will ultimately go and settle down at a local minimum when you differentiate like this. Okay, when you start differentiating from a particular point. So there are chances that if you apply the same mean squared error technique in logistic regression, there is a possibility that your model might end up in local minimum instead of finding out the global minimum. Okay, so for that reason, in logistic regression, what do we do is that we change our hypothesis a little. Okay, so what we do here is that instead of directly taking a theta transpose x, okay, so this theta transpose x is not something new, it is same. Okay, what I am trying to tell you here is like, look at this particular thing. Okay, theta transpose x is nothing but theta vector multiplied with this particular x to get the y. Okay, that's what we have seen in the last class also. So this is nothing but theta transpose x is nothing but the same linear regression hypothesis. Okay, so a theta vector which we have here will be multiplied with this particular x vector x matrix to get the y. Okay, so theta transpose x is already what we know from the multivariate linear regression, but we are trying to add on a new function like g. Okay, so what is this g now? This g is nothing but 1 by 1 plus e power minus z. This is actually a sigmoid function. Okay, the advantage of sigmoid function is that you keep putting the values on this particular z, you will find that the curve is something like this. Okay, the curve is something like this. So at z is equals to 0, you will see that this function will give you a 0.5. Okay, a 0.5. So why this sigmoid function has to be taken care in logistic regression is that in logistic regression, whenever we want to classify the data, we try applying this particular logistic regression function and see if my value is becoming greater than 0.5 or less than 0.5. Okay, so depending on what value we get, we assign it to the appropriate class. So for example, I have given here, suppose predict y is equals to 1 if h theta of x is greater than or equals to 0.5. So if something is coming as 0.5 and above 0.5, I'll consider this as a different class. Whereas something that is below 0.5, which is here, I'll consider that as a different class. Okay. Now the advantage of taking a sigmoid function is that now this will ensure that our logistic regression curve, cost curve, also will obtain a global minimum instead of local minimum. Okay, so how is it exactly working? So let's just see. Okay, so we have some training set x1 y1 x2 y2 and so on. So there are m samples. Now what is our objective function? The objective, I mean the hypothesis is that 1 by 1 plus e power minus theta transpose x. So why, how did it come? This comes from this particular formula. Okay, so h theta of x is equals to g of theta transpose x. Now substitute theta transpose x in place of z. Okay, that's how we got this particular equation. Now our objective is to find out again the theta vector. Okay, so the cost function, like I said, the cost function that we have taken earlier is the mean squared error. Now there is a modification from that to logistic regression. In logistic regression, instead of mean squared error, we'll try to calculate logarithmic error. Okay, so how do we, so my cost function is now changed comparatively to the linear regression function, where the cost function goes like this. Okay, minus log h theta of x if y is equals to 1, and minus log 1 minus h theta of x if y is equals to 0. Now how do we decide this, whether y is equals to 1 or y is equals to 0? That is depending on how we calculate this. Okay, we calculate y and see If the h theta of x is greater than or equal to 0.5, we tag it as 1. If h theta of x is less than 0.5, we tag it as 0. Now, based on that, we will calculate the cost function. Now, why we are considering this cost function here? Like I said, the moment you consider this cost function, the logarithmic one, and you derivate it partially with respect to your theta 0 and theta 1 and so on, okay, that means you are basically giving this cost function to the gradient descent algorithm again. Okay, so this will ensure that your cost function curve is again a perfect curve, like a bell one, and it will give you a global minimum instead of a local minimum. So that is the whole idea behind changing the cost function comparatively to the linear regression model. Okay, so hope we understood like how logistic regression works. Okay, so instead of fitting a line through the data, now our objective is to fit a hypothesis such that it should differentiate two different class labels. Now in this particular thing, I would like to mention one important point is that till now the example that we have seen is just only a binary classification. That means when we have only two classes, like maybe phishing or not phishing, spam or not spam, okay, survived or not survived, like that. If we have a binary classification, it is pretty easy. Now if somebody can ask me this question, like, okay, does it mean that logistic regression will be applicable only to binary classifiers? No, it is not the case. You can apply logistic regression even for multi-class classification. So how do we do that? Okay, so that simple example I have given here. Okay, so what do we call this type of classification is that one versus all classification. Okay, it is called as one versus all classifications. How do we do this? Okay, so in order to differentiate these three classes here, I need to fit three lines. Okay, so you can see here one red line, one blue line, and one green line. So how did we do that? So one versus all algorithm says that, okay, you consider this as one class and rest of all the points as a different class and try to fit a logistic regression curve. Okay, so you fit the blue line. The moment you fit the blue line, now this whole data set is divided into this box and this complete thing as a separate class. Okay, now once that is done, what do you do further is like, now you consider this triangles, green triangles as one class and rest of all the points as another class and try fitting a logistic regression. So you draw the green line now. Okay, now similarly, you have this red cross, consider it as a separate class and rest of all the points as separate class and try drawing a logistic regression curve, which is nothing but the red line. Okay, now doing such, what will happen is like you're trying to differentiate one class with respect to the other classes. So you can classify all the classes separately. Okay, so that's how exactly a one versus all algorithm will work. Interested participants, please have more look into such kind of multi-class classifications using logistic regression. Okay, now, so coming to the concept of overfitting and underfitting, I feel that this is very, very important. As a statistician or a data science person, you need to know what is mean by overfitting and underfitting. Okay, so yeah, so let's say I have some data like this. Okay, let's say I have some data like this, and I tried fitting a single line through that. Okay, a single line through that, a straight line through that. Okay, now in this particular diagram, you can observe that when you try calculating the mean squared error with respect to the predicted and the actual outputs, you will get a significant error. Okay, you will get a significant error because the reason is that the data is actually in the form of a curve, but you tried fitting a straight line through that. Okay, so that is the reason you are getting more error. Now in the second case, what you can see is that we, instead of fitting a line, we try to fit a curve such that the curve is almost passing through all the data points. Okay, I'm saying almost all the points. Okay, so this reduces the mean squared error significantly, right? Now, third curve here you can see is that the curve that you try to fit is actually passing through each and every data point perfectly. Okay, so when you try to take mean squared error of such a fit, your mean squared error will be almost negligible to zero. I mean, it will be almost like zero, negligible error will come. Okay. Now, what is the difference between these three with respect to your hypothesis is what I want you to focus on. Okay. So for the first one, underfitting, I can relate this with respect to our linear regression model that we have just done. Okay. So in our linear regression model here, what we have done is we have just taken only two parameters, theta 0 and theta 1 x. So we have already seen that we have considered only a single feature, that means square feet living, and we tried predicting the cost of the house. So you can see that though our data was like widely spread and we are trying to take only minimal number of features for our prediction, okay, you can see that it is not giving you a very good result. The mean squared error was like very high, right? Now, what if instead of taking only a single feature, if I consider few more features, okay, if I consider few more features. So that's what exactly we have done in multivariate. But see here, the moment you come to the multivariate, you can see that the hypothesis equation is no more a simple equation, but now it has become a complex equation. So that means theta 0, x0, theta 1, x1, theta 2, x2, plus so on, theta n, xn. So the equation is becoming complex because we are trying to fit a better curve than a simple straight line. Okay. So I can say that this particular kind of fitting a curve by considering more number of features gives you a better mean squared error. Okay. So that is with respect to our middle case, which is optimal. Okay. Now what about the last one, the overfitting part? Okay. So the overfitting is that we have considered maximum number of features. Okay. We have considered a maximum number of features from our data set. That means, let's say I have around, let's say 15 features. Okay. So based on that, I'm telling you, let's say out of the 15 features, I have considered around like 12 features. Okay. Then in that case, my hypothesis will become very complex because it will be like theta 1x plus theta 2x2 plus theta 3x3 plus theta 4x4 and so on till theta 12x12. Okay. So it is like a very, very complex polynomial equation. Okay. And that too, because this is having so many curves, I can say that the x's will not be exactly like x, but it will be like x square, x cube, and x power 4 and so on. So it will become a higher degree polynomial equation. The moment it will become a higher degree polynomial equation, one thing that you have to observe carefully is that the complexity of solving that particular model will become more. Okay, that is one thing. Second thing, the overfitting, what it tries to tell us is that the prediction that we are trying to do is perfectly working on the training data. Because what exactly happened here is that when we tried considering more number of features and solve a polynomial equation of a higher degree, we are exactly trying to fit through the training data that we have. So our training error will be completely zero. But when this particular model sees a new sample, okay, sees a new sample, let's say I have considered a new x, and for that x I'm asking it to predict what is the approximate value of y, then this model will fail because this model is overtrained on the training data, and as and when it sees a new test data, this model cannot predict what is the y for that particular new x. So that is called as overfitting. Okay. So overfitting generally happens because when we think that considering more number of features will give me good accurate results. Okay. So often people does that mistake by considering almost all the features into your model and try to fit a proper machine learning model. The problem is that the model will be overtrained on the training data, and as and when it sees a new testing data, the model will actually fail. Okay. So when you have an overfitting model, what exactly will happen is your training error will be zero. Okay. But you will have a very high testing error. Okay. Whereas here in the underfitting part, okay, both your training error as well as testing error, you will have to a significant extent, you will have both training error as well as testing error. Okay. Because the reason here is that instead of considering good number of features, you have taken only very few features into the consideration and tried to do a prediction model. So there also it will fail because the predictions may not be uh, accurate and will lead to a significant error. So here both training error as well as the testing error will be high. Whereas in the optimal case is where you considered good number of features. Okay, you considered sufficient number of features such that your model is performing better in terms of the error. Okay, so that is where you use your optimal case. So in the optimal case, both your training error as well as the testing error both will be less. Okay, so this is what you have to understand from what is mean by underfitting and what is mean by overfitting. So in certain terminology, in certain lectures, you will also see that the underfitting will be called as high bias, okay, and overfitting will be called as high variance. So why are we calling it as high bias and high variance is that here you can see that there is a bias in the prediction because we are trying to predict only based on one or two features, which is not an accurate model. Okay, similarly here you can see that as we considered more number of features, the model will try to fit for all the data in the training set, so it is displaying high variance. Okay, and the high variance will lead to a zero training error, but it will have a very high testing error. Okay, so underfitting is called as high bias and overfitting is called as high variance. So we don't want either this scenario or either this scenario when we are developing a machine learning model. We always try to balance both underfitting and overfitting, and we try to find some optimal way of fitting a machine learning model such that my training error as well as testing error both should be minimal. Okay, so this is our whole idea behind how to train a model and how to achieve optimal results. Okay, so there are few more points on overfitting and underfitting and how to avoid them. So we'll quickly look at that once you rejoin the call.